everyone, and welcome back to LilaCafe. Thank you so much for joining me again in this video. I'm going to be doing a speed draw of the two main characters from Interview with a Vampire. It has been one of my favorite shows to watch recently. I knew that I was going to be watching this series as soon as it came out. This is the second season. The first season was incredible, but I also really love this one too. Anyway, to go along with this speed bang today, I'm going to be reading a scary story. Maybe not necessarily scary, but it's called The Gothic Fantasy. Wait, let's see. It's Chilling Crime Short Stories with a foreword by Margaret Murphy, and it was published by Flame Tree Publishing. I'm pretty sure if you've ever been to like Barnes & Noble, you've probably seen this on their shelves somewhere, or like on one of the tables. I received this book for my birthday, and I was reading through a few of the stories, and I found one that I really liked, and it had to do with a vampire, so I thought that it might be perfect to read over this speed drawing. So, I thought it was a really cool story, but you guys let me know what you think. Yeah, thanks again for joining me in this video, and let's get into the story. Peculiar Affliction of Allison White by Jessie Bethia. When I arrived at the Old Grove Cemetery on Friday, the sun was just over the trees. The leaves were orange and yellow with the first days of autumn, and the Reverend and Constable and the Constable's deputies had already lifted the coffin of Sturgis Collins from his grave. In life, he was a man of healthy fortune and typical New England austerity, so the Collins family was able to purchase for their patriarch a lined coffin of polished black cherry with silver handles and fastenings. Heekins, the young constable's deputy, pulled his horse to a stop just inside the cemetery's gates so I could depart the buggy. Placing my blackthorn on the cold, hard soil and shivering in the morning dew, I turned and reached into the buggy for my medical bag, the contents of which I knew would prove regrettably necessary for this outing. When I retrieved the bag and started into the cemetery grounds, the Reverend Coventry saw my approach and waved, stepping around the lifted coffin with a grave face. "Doctor!" exclaimed he. "Thank Providence you're here. We only learned the name yesterday." I joined the Reverend, and we commenced to walking side by side among the gravestones, back to the site of the exhumation. "Sturgis Collins?" said I. "Then you've heard," said Coventry. "I was told the name yesterday," said I. "Was Collins one of your patients?" "Indeed," said I. "Typhoid fever, the poor man. A full month has passed since his demise." "Did you notice anything unusual about his affliction?" asked Coventry. "Anything that might relate to the present crisis?" I chuckled and shook my head, still pumping the blackthorn into the ground to steady every step. "No, my good man, no," said I. "It was typhoid fever, and typhoid fever alone. There was nothing preternatural about Sturgis Collins' life, nor I expect his afterlife." Now it was Reverend Coventry's turn to shake his head at my own naivety. "Strange things are afoot, good doctor," said he. "We must reckon with the spirit realm if we are to survive its conspiracies." We came to the edge of the coffin, surrounded by the constable and his deputies, who had managed to extract the box from the ground and lay it next to the hole in the earth where it belonged. Yet now they simply milled around it, avoiding the task to come. "Well, gentlemen," said I, "there's only one thing left to do, don't you suppose?" The constable nodded and removed his hat, and his deputies did the same. Then the constable took it upon himself to unclasp the silver fastenings on Sturgis Collins' coffin and attempt to pry it open. When that proved impossible with bare hands and brute force, one of his deputies approached with a crowbar and shoved it into the coffin's crease and compelled the casket to open. There lay Sturgis Collins, dressed in his finest shirt, ascot, and waistcoat, his silver-topped cane across his heart, with both hands upon it. His skin was gray and pallid and heavily sunken against the sharp contours of his bones, but otherwise his corpse was remarkably preserved. The eyes were peacefully shut, but I suppose what caused the chorus of gasps from the deputies around me was the sight of the dead man's mouth, which was wide open, in something resembling a mortal shriek. "His face! That proves it!" It's clear as day he's risen from the grave. Hardly, Reverend, hardly, said I. It's nothing but common rigor mortis. See here? His ribbon has come undone. I reached into the coffin and pulled out the black ribbon that was tied around his head and jaw, so that the family would be spared of the same ghastly sight. Evidently it came undone some time after his burial, said I, displaying the black ribbon for the deputies, the constable, and the reverend, thus allowing nature to take its course. But, doctor, said Coventry, you said yourself a full month has passed since he died, yet there is hardly any rot to him at all. How could he be so preserved if not for spectral interference? The answer is simple enough, Reverend, said I. Sturgis Collins was wealthy, so his coffin is sturdy, well sealed, protecting his remains from the elements and from predation by worms and maggots. I would venture to guess he should still prove a handsome corpse even 6 months hence. That is, if you want to dig up the old boy a second time. I placed the black ribbon back inside the coffin next to Sturgis's ear and turned to face Coventry and the rest of them. Their expressions each betrayed a different variety of horror, and the younger of the constable's deputies kept shifting from foot to foot, due to either nerves or morning chill, or both. Shall I do the deed? I asked Reverend Coventry. Or can we finally bury this superstitious nonsense with Sturgis Collins? Coventry looked up at me and spoke with soft, startled cadence. We must do what we came to do, doctor, said Coventry. I must remind you, Reverend, said I. The last 2 bodies we exhumed showed no signs of anything other than the expected decomposition of human remains. And yet we disposed of them out of the abundance of caution, said Coventry, as we shall do today and in the future, so long as Alison White lies abed, tormented by spectral agents. Something tortures this girl, doctor. You have seen it yourself. Indeed, I muttered. Indeed. So I set my blackthorn and my medical bag on the cold cemetery ground, unclasped the top of the bag, and picked out my favorite bone saw, a sturdy, sharpened instrument. The constable and the deputies and the reverend retreated by a few steps as I turned back to the coffin and quickly set about my work, sawing through what remained of the skin, muscles, tendons, and eventually the vertebra, until Sturgis Collins's head would be separated from the body and placed face down betwixt his legs. Such was the prescribed method, in this state anyway, for the disposal of vampires. No force of science or logic, it would seem, can extricate the New Englander from his superstitions. Even now, at the close of this glorious century, for reason, this era of Darwin and Pasteur, Edison and Tesla, scientists like myself are forced to contend with the ancient fears of men and the shameful machinations of women. Our unsavory business of the morning concluded, the Reverend Coventry and I paid a visit to the home of Alison White, the young girl whose peculiar affliction and fantastical accusations compelled these credulous New Englanders to dig up 3 of their deceased neighbors and examine their corpses for signs of vampirism. She was also, it is my shame to admit, my sister's daughter. We found my niece in the upstairs bedroom of her family's cozy house on Essex Street, in the same bed where she had been confined for nearly a week. There she was looked after day and night by my sainted mother, who always doted on pretty little Alison, and would never tolerate a negative word against the child. Though I knew my niece to be a liar, I readily admit young Alison certainly appeared to be at death's door. She was pale white, blonde hair matted to her forehead with sweat, her chest heaving every labored breath. Beyond outside appearances, however, there was absolutely no medical indication that anything was wrong with the girl, neither on that day nor on any of the prior days when I had occasion to examine her. Her heart rate was normal. A quick observation of her throat and windpipe revealed no physical reason for her labored breathing. All indications were, as they had been, that the girl was performing an elaborate ruse. "We wanted to tell you, Alison," said Coventry in his most gentle voice. "The doctor, the constable, and I visited the grave of Sturgis Collins today, and disposed of his remains in such a way that his spirit can no longer bring harm to you." "Thank you kindly, Reverend," said Alison in a half-whisper. "Was there anything incorrect about him? Were there any signs?" "Your uncle said he could see no signs of vampirism within the corpse," said Coventry. I longed to remind him that I could see no signs of vampirism because there are no signs of things that do not exist, but that was a conversation for another time. The Reverend took the rocking chair by the bed, which had been the post of Allison's loyal grandmother all the nights before. "Tell me, Allison," said Coventry, "are you certain now that it is Sturgis Collins who attacked you?" "I believe so, Reverend," coughed the girl. "But when they come in the night, it's hard to see their faces. It's just so terrible. So much pain." The tears began to form in the corners of her eyes. I retracted my stethoscope and placed my hands in my pockets as I stood over the bedridden child. "You said quite the same thing about the previous so-called vampires," said I, "Emily Neff and Thomas Summers. Yet we've exhumed their corpses and defiled their remains, and you still experience these nightly torments?" The Reverend shot me an angry look while the girl squirmed under her quilts. She whimpered at the wall behind me. "I cannot explain it." "Nor can I said. "I can only hope that now I have decapitated Sturgis Collins at your behest, that you can finally find some peace." "Doctor," hissed Coventry, "I think it's time we let your niece rest, don't you?" The Reverend, for good measure, nodded to the door. Yes, said I. "We will not be far away, Allison. Send for us if the vampires return." Coventry stood from his rocking chair, and we donned our hats and coats and made for the bedroom door. He left first, and as I was about to follow, I heard a small voice behind me. "I thank you, Uncle," said Allison, "for all you've done for me. I often think of those summer days when my family visited your cottage. You taught me so much about science." I glanced back at the girl in the bed. She sighed. "Knowledge is such a comfort in these terrifying times," she said. For just a flash of an instant I saw her affliction cured, her complexion rosy and her mind and eyes sharp. I even thought I saw the sparkle of a smile. Was I truly the only one who saw through her lies? I managed to convince Reverend Coventry that there was no need to dig up poor Annabel Winship that very day, so at sunrise on Saturday our vampire hunting party reconvened at Old Grove Cemetery for yet another morning of ghoulish work. The Winships were a poor farming family living on the outskirts of town and surviving off hard work and not a little charity from Reverend Coventry's parish. The gravestones in the corner of Old Grove were bland and often made from nothing more than fragile shale. When Coventry and I found Annabel Winship's grave, her casket had already been disinterred. Unlike the previous day cleansing of Sturgis Collins' remains, Annabel Winship's family opted to attend the grisly ritual, and I saw the dead woman's father and younger sister standing near the constable as his deputies pulled her casket from the ground. "Was she a patient of yours, doctor?" said Coventry as we approached the grave. "Yes," I sighed. "Consumption was her killer. Taken much before her time, I'm afraid." The Winships could scarcely afford such an elaborate coffin as that of Sturgis Collins. Annabel's casket was cheap, white pine, easily pried open by the constable, and so we were quickly greeted by the sight of her pretty young corpse wearing a sky-blue dress, her hands still crossed over her stomach. Sitting on the bottom of the casket, I spotted the dried and faded petals of the flowers she held in her hand the day she was buried. Nothing about the corpse seemed out of the ordinary. Even the girl's own black ribbon was still tied around her head, keeping her jaw in place. I hoped that would be enough to show Reverend, the constable, and the Winships that there were no reason to go further with this nasty business. But of course I was mistaken. "It is as I feared," whispered Coventry. "What are you on about?" said I. "There's not a thing wrong with her." "That's just it, doctor. Don't you see?" said Coventry. "You told me yesterday Sturgis Collins was only preserved because of his coffin, but here Annabel Winship lies in nothing but a simple pine box, yet just like Sturgis, it's as if she died yesterday." I looked again at the corpse before us. Coventry was right. The girl was far better preserved than her interment would have allowed. I tried to think of an explanation to offer when we heard a hoarse shriek from the other side of the casket. "Her stone!" gasped the girl's father. "Her stone is loose!" Coventry and I looked and beheld Mr. Winship easily shoving his daughter's gravestone to and fro. I stuttered, for I was certain a natural explanation would be forthcoming, and yet I could not deny the soil surrounding the stone was severely loosened, allowing the stone to teeter like a child's loose tooth. "Gentlemen," I said with my arms outstretched. Gentlemen, please, let's not panic. We must follow reason and logic. But as always, I could not be heard over the hysterics of the little girl. Annabel Winship's little sister stood at the edge of the casket, pointing eagerly at the corpse and shrieking with tears in her eyes. Her shoes, she said. Daddy, Anna's lost her shoes. All of us came around the casket to follow the little girl's pointing finger. Sure enough, the corpse of Annabel Winship was barefoot, and no shoes could be seen lying anywhere near the coffin. She loved those shoes, Daddy, cried the little girl. She wanted to be buried in them. She told me herself the day before she died. It's true, said the father. We made certain she had them on when we put her in the ground. Sweet Jesus, my little girl's done walked out of the grave. I hung my head. There was simply no reasoning with these people. I knew, of course, there was no vampirism afoot in the cemetery, but yet I had no explanation with which to silence their superstitions. The Winship father and daughter embraced each other and wept over their deceased relation. Reverend Coventry approached me. His eyes were wide and his mouth was agape. That settles it, Doctor, said he. I've had enough of this business, Reverend, said I. You must finish it, Doctor, said he. There's nothing to finish, said I. This is a farce, I tell you. Allison lies to us. You need more evidence, said Coventry. Is what we have seen this morning truly not enough for you? In frustration, I threw my medical bag to the ground and withdrew the bone saw, holding its teeth within inches of the Reverend's face. If you believe so strongly, you may do it yourself, said I. I tire of decapitating my neighbors on the whims of a child. Perhaps you'd like to take on the Lord's work for today. Coventry glanced from the serrated blade of the bone saw to the neck of the young corpse in the casket. He looked as if he would sooner vomit than take the saw's handle. Well then, said I, let this be the God-forsaken end of it. With that, I stormed over to the coffin, and before the Winship father and daughter could stop me, I commenced slicing through Annabel's neck, her skin, her muscles, and her tendons and vertebrae. I cut furiously and did my best to make it an audible experience for all who surrounded the grave. I wanted them all to know what superstition sounds like. Saturday night, I took my supper in the Hermitage Tavern alone, trying to think of what to do next. It happened that the table I'd been given faced the other side of Essex Street, and I could look up to the top of the White Household and see the light in Allison's bedroom window. I wondered if my niece was surrounded by doting family members, all while she schemed ways to gain another flash of attention and notoriety. I wondered how she might finally be stopped. While I ate, one of the constable's deputies, a different man than Heekins, came to tell me that my niece wanted to see me. I was shown to Allison's bedroom and found her there alone. She retained her pallid complexion, sleepless red eyes, and matted hair, but she was sitting upright with her back against the headboard, hands crossed over the top of her quilt, smiling upon my arrival. Hello, Uncle, said she. I'm real happy you were able to come visit me. I wanted to ask after Annabel Winship. She is still dead, said I. Yes, said Allison, but was there anything incorrect about her corpse? She was missing her shoes, said I. Oh, said Allison, looking off into the ether. How strange. Indeed, said I. The good Reverend interprets it as a sign of vampirism. Tell me, does Annabel Winship wear shoes when she comes to torment you? Oh, whimpered Allison. I'm not sure. It's hard to say. It's all just so painful. I grumbled. Yes, I've heard. Why have you summoned me, Allison? Why, I thought you might look after me and perhaps give my poor grandmother a rest, said Allison sweetly. You know, Uncle, I've always wanted to be a doctor like you. I always cherished those family visits to your cottage, watching you work with your patients, all the interesting books and instruments and things in your office. Allison, I interrupted, I should think it would give your grandmother a fine rest indeed if you gave up this foolishness. Why, whatever do you mean, Uncle? You know exactly what I mean, girl. Girl. Sorry. I approached her bed now, and I admit my aim was menace. I meant to scare the truth out of her once and for all. You may wrap the whole of this town, perhaps the whole of New England, round your little finger, I hissed, but I see through you, Allison. This is all a farce, a fiction. You should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. Again, I saw the wave of perfect health sweep across her face. Her eyes glimmered with malice, and the corners of her mouth curled subtly into a smile. "Yes, it is a shame, isn't it, Uncle?" said she, "when we are finally seen through." I prepared a retort, a fierce demand for her to admit her lies before the entire town, but we were disturbed by a commotion from outside the girl's bedroom. The bedroom door flew open and a young Heekins appeared, his face ruddy and his chest heaving. "Doctor," gasped Heekins, "you must come quickly. There is another one." "Another what?" said I. "Another girl," said he. "Another affliction. Sarah Baldwin was thrown into a rage tonight, at her family's dinner table. Attacked, she says, by the vampire of Claudia Linwood." "Claudia Linwood?" said I, for I recognized the name instantly. "She died in my care, of consumption, just like Annabel Winship." "Yes, doctor," said Heekins, "we must go now. The Reverend wants to dispose of the corpse tonight." "Tonight?" said I. "Why not in the morning?" "Time is of the essence," said Heekins. "I believe he means to cleanse the remains himself. Your comments to him at the Winship grave today have put a steel in his spine, sir." I hunched over the bed. I briefly forgot about my niece's presence while I rubbed my chin and tried to decide a course of action. "No," said I. "We shall do it. Have you any shovels?" "In my buggy, doctor." "Then we must go to the old grove and spare the good Reverend this ghastly charge." I left with Heekins, but not before exchanging one final angry glance at Allison White. At my urging, Heekins drove his horse and buggy hard and fast up the road, bursting through the gates of the old grove cemetery. The sky was clear when we leapt from the buggy with our shovels, but the wind was fierce, tossing and twirling the autumn leaves about the gravestones. Heekins carried a lantern before his person as he weaved through the stones to the grave of Claudia Linwood. We were once again among the wealthy plots of the old cemetery, not far from where Sturgis Collins lay at rest with his head in between his knees. "Here it is," announced Heekins, throwing his lantern on the stone before us so I could clearly see the name of Claudia Linwood. Heekins swung the lantern away and looked at me. "Are you sure you want to do it now?" said he. "Just the two of us?" We were alone. "Yes," said I. "We should do it ourselves and be quick about it. Lay down your lantern." He followed my instruction and gently lowered his lantern to the soil so that its light remained on Claudia Linwood's gravestone. Then, with his back turned to me, I lifted the shovel and swung it against his body. Young Heekins collapsed against the gravestone, pushing himself over onto his back. The faint lantern glow, I could see him giving me one last, confused, pleading, wide-eyed glance before I lowered the sharp end of my shovel into his throat. With one quick motion, I pushed the blade through his skin, his trachea, his muscles, his tendons, until I felt the satisfying snap of the shovel passing through his vertebra. So now, driving Heekins' horse and buggy as hard and fast as I can, I make for the Connecticut border. By now, I suspect the Reverend and the constable will have found poor headless Heekins. By now, they've probably opened Claudia Linwood's grave and found it empty. And in a few hours, I expect they shall find her corpse in the cottage wine cellar, where it lay on ice along with a few others. Presumably, they shall also find Annabel Winship's shoes down there somewhere, though I never could. I had assumed no one would notice their absence. I suppose it is my own fault for not keeping a closer eye on my niece whenever her family made visits to my home. I suppose during one such visit she must have snuck into my office and found the cellar door hidden behind my bookshelf, thus allowing her to discover my crimes. You must understand a scientific necessity. You must understand, of course, that an anatomist is always in need of fresh cadavers upon which to experiment. It was all simply a scientific necessity. I confess, however, that the girl's method of unmasking my deeds was rather clever. She must have believed that she could not accuse me in public either out of fear of my retribution, or simply out of fear that she would not be believed, though she needed the authorities to incidentally discover the empty graves that I had left behind, and thus she invented her little vampire crisis. With my mother watching over day and night, I could hardly make a move to silence her accusations, and when I met each of her challenges, she must have realized that she needed to deprive me of the necessary time to rebury the alleged vampires as she named them. Thus she called me to attend her tonight, and had her accomplice Sarah Baldwin accuse the final vampire. She left me no time, no choice but to escape. I should very much like to wring Allison's neck, but instead I drive ever faster for Connecticut, or perhaps I shall quit New England altogether. I expect this accursed region, where superstition reigns, shall always prove hostile to noble men of science like myself. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to this story. Please leave me a comment to let me know what you thought about it. I thought it was really cool. I did not expect the main character to be the villain. Like, I genuinely didn't. For some people, it may have been obvious, but for me, it wasn't, and I thought it was really cool. So, yeah, really interesting story. And a lot of these other stories are really good too. Some of them are not my favorite. I'll just say that. I'll say that. But who knows? I might read some. Let me know if you want to hear some of the ones that I don't really like, because that might be really funny. Thank you so much for joining me at LilaCafe, and I hope you'll come back and see me again. Bye-bye.